Hey guys, back with another video. Today I'm going to be talking about one of the three nested data types in polars. So what makes polars kind of unique is that it does support nested data types. And so a nested data type is a column that doesn't hold one value, but rather holds a series of values. And there's different types of nested data types in polars. And so today I'm going to be talking about just one of them, doing an introduction on structs. And so first we'll just talk about just what a struct is. But first I guess we'll talk about the input data we're using. I just made some time data up, so some time in minutes, so work time 1 through 3. So again, just time expressed in minutes. And so a struct, it's a nested data type, but what kind of nested data? It's a collection of columns within a single column. So it's a little bit different than like a list, right? A list is a collection of items. Here it's a collection of columns, meaning that those items are each associated with a column name. And so polars stores these columns between curly brackets and displays the columns as key value pairings. And so here's what it might look like. Actually, this is what it would look like. So if you see data that looks like this in your data frame, that's a good indication that you're working with a struct and that you do have nested columns in your data. And so that leads to another question of when do you encounter structs? So really just two ways. I'll be talking about one of these instances today, just instance number one. When you create them yourself out of multiple columns, there are sometimes reasons that you want to do that. And then the second area where you encounter them is when the input data itself is nested, namely JSON data. That's the main culprit there that'll do that. Well, culprit, JSON is a good way of storing data, and if JSON data is your input data, then what polars is going to do is try to read those in as a struct. So I'll be talking about how you create a struct today and how you just some basic tools that polars gives you to manipulate and display those data. And so what we'll do first is just create a struct ourselves out of this work time data that we created. And so here, what we're doing is we're just doing .select because we want to create a new data frame. And so we're keeping name, and then we're going to create a struct. And so the way you create the struct is you just do PL or polars and then just .struct. And then within parenthesis, the columns that we want to place within the struct. And then we alias that because we are creating a new column and we're just calling this work times. And so we will take a look at this and just see how our struct data looks. Just get rid of this. Okay, and so here's our struct data. We see that all of our values are contained within these curly brackets. So that's a dead giveaway that this is a struct here. Another thing that can tell us that we're working with a struct is if we look at the data type indicator underneath the column name, we can see the data type that is a struct, and the 3 in the brackets here, that refers to the number of elements that we're holding within the struct. So it has, we see that bracket 3, and that tells us that we did indeed put 3 variables within the struct that we created here. So one thing about this is you may have noticed that I mentioned above that these are going to be expressed in terms of key value pairs, and right now we're only seeing the values. So that kind of begs the question, how do we see the keys? So one easy way to see the keys is with .glimpse, and what .glimpse is going to do is just print out a few sample records, and that should let us see the first few column keys. So glimpse is a really good way to get some basic information about your data. And so here we see that in our struct column here, now we can see the keys. So work time 1, work time 2, and work time 3, and behind the colon is the corresponding value. So very easy. And so another thing you're thinking is, well, we have all these data stored within here. What happens if we just want to get one column or 2 of those columns, like a subset of these columns, and not have to deal with all of them? It is possible to do that with the .field method within polars. And so the way you use the .field method is you just write in within select or with columns. Here I'm just printing it out, so we want to use select so that we don't get everything. you just write in the name of the column, so PL call work times. And then when you use a struct method, instead of just writing in the method, you have to write in .struct first, and then the name of the struct method you want to use. It's kind of strange, but that is just the way the syntax is set up. So .struct and then .field, and then the name of the field you're trying to get. So here we're just trying to get work time 1, and so that should extract the column and just give us a printout of that one column. So I'll run that again, see how it looks. Whoop. Okay. There you go. So yeah, there's work time 1, and we just were able to extract one of those columns. And so another thing we might want to do is we might want to be able to have the ability to rename these fields before we unnest them to avoid instances like multiple column names, right? If you unnest these and what you're unnesting has the same column name as a column that's already in your data frame, it's going to toss back an error. So the way you rename columns is with another struct method called rename fields. And so again, to use rename fields, you just use you point to the struct column you want to manipulate, then .struct, then .rename fields, and then within a list in the options, you have to pass in the names you want to give the new columns. And so here I'm renaming them to time 1, time 2, and time 3. And we'll glimpse it since we want to take a look at the keys. Okay, so we see time 1, time 2, and time 3. Very good. And so finally, having these data in this format is, of course, kind of nice just to kind of have it all in one place. But what if we wanted to manipulate these data? It is possible to do that. It is possible to apply manipulation logic globally on all these elements. But if you do that, you need to make sure that all of the columns that you're packing into the struct are of the same data type. That's only, again, if you want to manipulate all the columns, and you need to make sure that the manipulation is being done on columns of the same type. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide each of these columns by 60 and express these times in hours instead of minutes. And so to do that is actually very simple. You just treat it as you would treat a normal column. So here we have a with columns, and you just type in the name of the struct, and then we're dividing it, so true div divided by 60. So what that's going to do is it's going to apply this transformation to each of the elements within this struct. So element 1, element 2, and element 3. And so it does that without the need for any kind of looping code or anything like that. So it's very convenient. And again, if we were to do this, we'd want to make sure there are no string columns in there. Okay, so we see our time variables are now expressed in hours instead of minutes. So again, very, very surprisingly easy to do. And so finally, so you have these variables in a struct all in one place. What happens if you don't want the struct anymore? What happens if you want to flatten this? In other words, what happens when you want these variables out of a struct and just into their own separate columns? Again, Polars makes that very, very easy to do. It's not a computationally or it's not programmatically a laborious thing. You use the unnest method, and you don't use you don't have to use a select or with columns. You just type in the name of the data frame and then .unnest, and then within the options you type in the name of the structs that you want to unnest. So we'll go ahead and do that and just take a look at our new flattened data frame. Okay, there we go. So as you can see, Polars makes it really easy to not only create structs, but also to manipulate and unpack them almost seamlessly. It's surprisingly easy how easy it is to learn and just pick up. So that's a brief introduction to structs. In my next video, what I'll talk about is what happens when your input data is nested and you've got to wrangle that to flatten it. Structs play an important role in all that, and definitely look forward to talking about that. So thanks so much for listening and watching, and have a good rest of your day.